Welcome to this study guide for the Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. And in this presentation, I'm going to focus on the key concepts from this wonderful book, and we're going to go through them so I can break them down for you. If you've not read this book yet, I highly recommend it, but of course, that's the whole point of this study guide. Whether you've read the book or not, this study guide should enhance your understanding and help you do a better job with your manifestations and just your overall sense of how to apply your imagination to get more results in your life. So we're going to begin by talking about your self-concept. I'll just quickly cover the areas that we're going to talk about. By the way, again, this is Jason from the lawofassumption.org. And I prepared this presentation around the core concepts of the book. So it's not organized in terms of chapter by chapter. Rather, it's organized in terms of the key concepts that Neville covers. So I'm going to be pulling quotations and ideas as we go through each of these concepts. So we're going to talk about your self-concept, the subjective center, what an assumptive world is, and really the power of awareness is the key book by Neville about the law of assumption. So if you're looking for one book that really sums up what the law of assumption is about, I highly recommend this one. We're going to talk about your ideal, which I believe is the most important thing to manifest. Yes, we tend to have these lists of specific things that we want, but really what we're here to do is to manifest an ideal and your imagination, your focus, and we'll talk about how to actually apply some of these concepts. So let's begin with your self-concept. So Neville begins this book talking about the I amness, and he reminds us that I am is our true identity, and that throughout our life, we form an identity around this I amness. It's who you consider yourself to be. And a big part of the power of awareness is becoming aware that the core of you, the essence of you, when you close your eyes in meditation, you can really come into contact with this idea that I am is a state of being that is limitless. And as Joe Dispenza would say, your I amness is this awareness from the quantum field. And I think it's important that we draw in some of these modern concepts to what Neville was teaching. And of course, Neville says that your I amness is your imagination, and that is God. You have this power and presence of God within you. I am is that reality to which whatever happens, we must turn for an explanation of the phenomena of life. It is I am's concept of itself that determines the form and scenery of its existence. So your self-concept is always manifesting. And anytime you look at your world and think about the things that are showing up around you, your I amness, your identity, is the very place where these things are originating. When you know that consciousness is the one and only reality, conceiving itself to be something good, bad, or indifferent, and becoming that which it conceived itself to be, you are free from the tyranny of second causes, free from the belief that there are causes outside of your own mind that can affect your life. This is a very liberating concept, can also be a really difficult one to understand and embrace if you're new to some of these ideas, that your identity, is cause. You are connected to cause, and that consciousness is pouring through you, and that you have the power to connect to it and to create in your life and in your world. All is mind, as we say from the Hermetic principles. So there is only one I am, and you are that I am, and while I am is infinite, you by your concept of yourself are displaying only a limited aspect of the infinite I am. This reminds me of Genevieve Barrand, her quote, which actually she got from Thomas Troward, that my mind is a center of divine operation. So emphasis on the word my mind is a center, because the infinite has no one center. If God is infinite and God is everywhere and spirit is everywhere, then it is by definition infinite. But it is also by definition omnipresent, which means that it is present in its entirety in you. That's why you can say with confidence that my mind is a center of divine operation. There is only one I am, and you are that I am. And this is that paradoxical concept that you and I are both the one I am, because there is only one I am. Very difficult one sometimes to get our minds around that, but when you think about the infinite or the concept of infinity, you can really begin to connect with this idea and understand. We begin with this self-concept. It's so important that you reflect on that. That's why sitting meditation can be so helpful for connecting to your I am, the power of your I amness. So we move from there to your subjective center, and Neville reminds us that consciousness is the only reality. Therefore, your subjective center, your subjective state is the only reality. I like to use the metaphor or illustration of a VR headset. So you are the I amness wearing this VR headset, and that is your subjective center. It is your subjective state, the way you feel, the way you're being, the way you perceive yourself in your life, your expectations, right? Your assumptions about what's happening now, what's coming in the future, who are you? And by manifesting, Neville tells us, is meant experiencing the results of these concepts in your world. So we're always manifesting, we're doing it through our subjective center, and you experience the results of your subjective center through your life. So Neville tells us you must turn from the objective appearance of things and turn to the subjective center of things. This is why we say it's only a state. The state of consciousness that you have been in is outpicturing all around you in your life. And so we turn from that, and we turn from those objective appearances into our subjective center. And this is where you can take your power back, because the way you feel, the way you're being, your state is the very thing that manifests all around you, and you have complete control of that. Complete control. And the only way you get complete control of your state is by turning from objective appearances. And in my opinion, people will often say that you should ignore the reality around you. I don't believe that that's an effective way of thinking about this. Rather, I suggest that you look at your reality in a new way. You take ownership of it, and you start to turn it in the direction of what you want. Health, wealth, beauty, and genius are not created. They are only manifested by your mind. This gets us back to one of the most important concepts in the law of assumption and just manifesting in general, which is you are not actually the creator. We might throw this term around of creating your reality because it's suggestive of manifesting, but actually what we're doing is selecting versions of reality through our state of being, through our mind, through our emotions, through our vibe or frequency. And we do these things from within. So we do not create wealth. We manifest wealth by the rearrangement of our mind. Your assumptive world. So we've talked about your self-concept and your subjective center. Your assumptive world is where we begin to put together these pieces into the law of assumption as a whole. So man's chief delusion is his conviction that there are causes other than his state of consciousness. Man's chief delusion. So our chief delusion is that there are things outside of us that are causing what's happening in our life. This one statement can be so powerful, but it can also take time to process. We grow up in a world where we just have trained our mind to believe that there are causes outside of us. And this is something that you go through a process of time of accepting and understanding that you are attached to first cause, and that we live in this stream, this outer world of effects. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Of course, the very often quoted passage from Romans chapter 12. A man's consciousness is all that he thinks and desires and loves. all that he believes is true and consents to. That is why a change of consciousness is necessary before you can change your outer world. You've got to get it in consciousness. You have to get it from your state of being, from your inner being, the inner man, as Neville would say. Once you get something from within, then you are transformed by the renewing of your mind, or we might even say the renewing of your being, the renewing of your spirit. I find it incredibly helpful to replace the term consciousness with the word spirit. Sometimes this can be helpful. I know consciousness can be a bit of a multi-syllabic, complicated word that can be very overwhelming. What is consciousness? What does this mean? What is this awareness? The term spirit can be a very effective substitute here. So we would say a man's spirit is all that he thinks and desires and loves, all that he believes is true and consents to. That is why a change of spirit is necessary before you can change your outer world. You've got to get busy changing your spirit and get spirited about life in the way or the direction that you want to be spirited in. All transformation begins with an intense, burning desire. You must want to be different and intend to be before you can make change within yourself. Then you must make your future dream a present fact. You do this by assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled. If this assumption is persisted in until it becomes your dominant feeling, the attainment of your ideal is inevitable. So we persist in this assumption by sticking to the feeling of our wish fulfilled. Of course, the feeling of your wish fulfilled is one of Neville's most popular quotes. It comes up again and again. And here in our assumptive world, the way we build our assumptions is around this feeling state. So you're already doing this now. You are feeling certain things within. You are fulfilling a wish, whether you realize it or not, and that is currently externalizing around you. So the idea here is we examine what those assumptions are and we change them. And that begins to change yourself, and it begins to change your expectations. And then it also begins to change your feeling state. In giving birth to your ideal, you must bear in mind that the methods of mental and spiritual knowledge are entirely different. This is a point that is truly understood by probably not more than one person in a million. You know a thing mentally by looking at it from the outside, comparing it with other things, analyzing it, thinking of it. Whereas you can know a thing spiritually only by becoming it, only by thinking from it. You must be the thing itself and not merely talk about it or look at it. So if we're trying to become wealthy or successful in business, for example, we don't just sit around looking at it and talking about it. Now, of course, we may do that sometimes. That's just part of the growth process of going from point A to point B. But in order to manifest it, in order to accelerate this process, we become it. You must be the thing itself. You must be the state of the successful entrepreneur or the successful business person. You must be the thing itself and not merely talk about it or look at it. So this points us directly to the next point here, which is your ideal. Neville tells us the only fate governing your life is the fate determined by your own assumptions. For an assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. So if you look at your life now, there are certain things around you which have already hardened into fact or are beginning to harden into fact. But everything depends upon your attitude towards yourself. That which you will not affirm as true of yourself will never be realized by yourself. You must abandon yourself to your ideal. You must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled until your assumption has all the sensory vividness of reality. You must imagine that you are already experiencing what you desire. The man who is not prepared for the conscious plunge into the assumption of the wish fulfilled is not ready to live consciously by the law of assumption. So I would say, actually, you're already doing this. You already have assumptions that are out picturing in your world. But if you can go within and change these assumptions and adjust them, you can begin to shift the reality that's going on around you. You are the moth. The flame is your desire. You, as the old man versus the new man, you must become conscious of being wealthy to know wealth. You must be conscious of being love to know love. So you must absorb yourself completely in this desire, completely within the wish fulfilled. And that is how you consummate your manifestation. You become it and then you outpicture it. I think this concept of your ideal is so important because we often get caught up with manifesting specific things or specific people. And while there is a time and a place for that, first of all, I'm not going to judge. I certainly do this myself. But I find that I get more success, more satisfaction when I'm focused on an ideal rather than being overly focused on specific things. And often you can find your ideal by looking at the specific things that you're trying to create. But we're looking here deep within for the symbols. What do these things represent that I want to manifest? If it's wealth, for example, or money, you might see that as a symbol for security, for strength, for being grounded. And that is truly what you're manifesting, is those feelings of security and power and experiencing reality in this wonderful, vibrant way. So let's go on now and talk about your imagination. Imagination is what Neville calls the truth that sets you free. Imagination is the only redemptive power in the universe. To become the master of your assumptions is the key to undreamed of freedom and happiness. You can obtain this mastery by deliberate conscious control of your imagination. Your assumptions, which you've built up throughout your life, are likely holding you back in certain areas. So the idea is to become the master, to master those assumptions, and to change them through deliberate control of your imagination, because you are already generating these assumptions through your imagination, whether you're doing it consciously. Most of the time we do this unconsciously. So the idea is to become a deliberate creator, to have conscious control of what we're doing within. Form a mental image, a picture of the state desired of the person you want to be. Concentrate your attention upon the feeling that you are already that person. Visualize the picture in your consciousness, then feel yourself to be in that state as though it actually formed your surrounding world. By your imagination, that which was a mere mental image is changed into a seemingly solid reality. So when we create these mental pictures, it's important to remember and to pay very careful attention that we are forming a picture of the state of the desired person you want to be. And you concentrate your attention upon the feeling that you are already that person. I think it's so important to highlight this, that what you're really trying to change is yourself. You're trying to change the way you feel about reality, the way you experience reality, and you're doing it from this new vantage point of this person who represents your ideal. So if you're manifesting love, relationship, a specific person, you become the person, you embody the person who already has that. And you do this within your imagination. But again, I encourage you to focus on the ideal. We tend to often get a little bit carried away with manifesting specific things and getting overly attached to those things. And I actually think that you can be more successful manifesting specific things by detaching from them. And one of the most effective ways of doing this is by focusing a little bit more on the symbol of that thing rather than the very specific thing itself. Neville tells us the great secret is a controlled imagination and a well-sustained attention, firmly and repeatedly focused on the feeling of the wish fulfilled until it fills the mind and crowds out all other ideas from your consciousness. You become so consumed by this feeling. And feeling, by the way, we can approach this from two different places, and I think they're both important. By feeling, do we mean emotion? Yes. And by feeling, do we mean knowing that it's done? Yes. It's both of these things. We embody these feelings. And a very simple way I find to enter the feeling of something is to begin with gratitude. Gratitude is a very powerful place to begin finding your feeling of the wish fulfilled. Whatever this thing is that you want, I'm sure that once you had it, you would be in a state of absolute gratitude. And I think this is also a very powerful way to connect with the true creator. Remember, we say with Neville's language here that your imagination is God, but your imagination, although it may be a creative driving factor, your imagination is not going to do the actual functional work out here in reality. Your imagination is the directing power that is connecting and fusing yourself with this over mind. All is mind, as we say. But the things that are going to happen in order to lead to your fulfillment, that part is not your job. That part, and this is a very important distinction, that when we are expressing gratitude, I find it's very effective to express gratitude to the Father, right? To infinite intelligence, infinite source, this thing that we are connected to. You can experience in imagination what you desire to experience in reality, and by maintaining this experience in imagination, your desire will become an actuality. When the imagination is not controlled and the attention not steadied on the feeling of the wish fulfilled, then no amount of prayer will produce the desired effect. So we must control it, we must focus it, and we do that by focusing on the feeling. We do that, and let's return here, that we focus on the feeling of the ideal. We concentrate our attention upon the feeling that you are already the person, have already arrived in this version of reality, and thus you are that person. So this is our imagination, which is the key for unlocking our self-concept, taking back our subjective center, re-examining our assumptions, and opening up our ideal, manifesting our ideal into the world. Next, we'll talk about your focus. And this is really about keeping yourself in a place of knowing that it's done and trusting in this power that you have within. So a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. If we begin to give power to external circumstances or power to some external force that does not exist, then we become double-minded in our ways. We begin to flip-flop around, and that will affect what we experience. We become a double-minded person, right? And remember, if you are manifesting this ideal version of you, then you are single-minded. Once, if you can imagine opening up the multiverse and accessing this version of you, selecting this version of you, do you think that this version of you who already has your desire and is already living your ideal life, does this version of you have a double-minded way of being? Definitely not. This version of you that you are unlocking is single-minded, so we must step into that now. The power of attention is the measure of your inner force. Concentrated observation on one thing shuts out other things and causes them to disappear. The great secret of success is to focus the attention on the feeling of the wish fulfilled without permitting any distraction. To develop your attention, Neville recommends night after night, as you're going to sleep, try to hold your attention on the activities of the day in reverse order. And this is part of Neville's description of his revision technique. But in this one, all you're doing is going in reverse order and kind of revisiting everything that happened to you that day, doing it from your imagination, doing it in first person as though you're already there. I find this a really effective exercise. It's kind of fun. You can do it in fast forward. You can kind of play around with it. And in this, we're completely detached from any feelings. We're just sort of observing what happened through the day. And Neville says this is no easy exercise, but just as specific exercises greatly help in developing specific muscles, this will greatly help in developing the muscle of your attention, which is very true because when we're doing our imaginal acts or we're going into imagination to create the things we want to create, your attention is extremely important. The mind is like a wild horse, and if you let it run off, it will run off. So we have to gain control, in this exercise that Neville describes here of revisiting the whole day can be very powerful. You will notice as you begin to do this exercise that you'll start and then you'll find your mind drifting and you have to pull yourself back. Okay, where was I? Okay, it was around dinner time. I'm going back now. And then you're drifting and pulling yourself back. This is a very useful exercise. I highly recommend it. If you want to apply revision to it, you can then once you get to the morning when you're getting out of bed, then you replay the whole day in normal direction. So as though it's happening now, from getting out of bed all the way until you're going into bed where you are now. Then you reimagine the whole day from your ideal. So from that place where you understood or you experience the day through the eyes of this person, the person that you're trying to become, the one who already has the relationship or who already has the money, the business success, the health, whatever it is that you are manifesting. When you attain control of the internal direction of your attention, you will no longer stand in shallow water, but will launch out into the deep of life. You will walk in the assumption of the wish fulfilled as on a foundation more solid even than earth. I love that sentence. I love this idea of finding yourself on a foundation that's more solid even than earth itself. And when you do this, I think you will find that as you develop this ability, that your assumptions and your inner world does become more solid even than earth. And I submit to you that that may be part of the very reason that we are here, to develop these abilities. So let's move on now to be ye doers. So be ye doers, of course, is to remind us not to just be hearers of these ideas, but to actually do them, to actually apply them, to be the operant power. You keep the feeling of your wish fulfilled constantly alive in your consciousness. What you must strive after is being. In order to do, it is necessary to be. The end of yearning is to be. Your concept of yourself can only be driven out of consciousness by another concept of yourself. By creating an ideal in your mind, you can identify yourself with it until you become one and the same with the ideal, thereby transforming yourself into it. Again, I think so important to attach yourself to these ideals, to change the concept of yourself in your world. So let's say you find yourself in an unhappy relationship today, and you have these built-in assumptions and expectations that, every time I get into a relationship, it's just kind of crap and everything sucks and I seem to attract the wrong people. You have these assumptions built into your self-concept that you may not even be aware of because they're so deeply embedded within your imagination, within your concept of yourself that you're building from within, that this practice allows you to shift your concept of yourself, shift your state of being by focusing on the feeling of the wish fulfilled and by driving out that old concept of yourself by focusing in consciousness on the new concept of yourself. Let's put this into action and talk about manifesting. So you have a desire, and again, I highly recommend that with your desire that you build this around an ideal rather than obsessing over, this exact person or this exact house or this exact. Now, again, I'm not going to say that you can't have exactly what you want. I do think that there's some power in that, but I would caution you from getting too obsessive over exactly this thing. I think that you open yourself up more to the flow and spirit of life when, rather than obsessing over exactly this thing, you begin to shift and focus on concepts and ideals and symbols, because that's what we really want. We want the way these things make us feel. We want a loving, caring relationship. We want to feel loved and be loved. We don't necessarily want this specific person. Now, don't let me take that away from you. If that's what you feel in your heart of hearts that you really want, then go for it. I encourage you to go for that. But I also encourage you, while you're manifesting your specific person or specific job or specific whatever it is, yes, you deserve that. You can have that. But I would also encourage you to to interlace the ideal, the feelings, the symbols, because I know you will have more success, and you will find it easier to attract the exact things you want, because you're more focused on ideals. So we have a desire, then we have our SATs or alpha state. I'm a big fan of using alpha brainwave music to put myself into kind of a mental trance, into what Jose Silva calls the alpha brainwave state during the middle of the day, for example, or at nighttime. Very relaxing, definitely puts your mind in the right frame. And then we use our imagination. So stay absolutely 100% focused on the feeling of your wish fulfilled, so much so that you become completely consumed by this dominant feeling. Now, notice that Neville does not say that you become consumed by the specific thing. Rather, you become consumed by the feeling. Let the feeling just take you over. Like you are possessed by the feeling, the state of being, because what you're really doing is changing yourself. You develop this feeling within you until it crowds all other ideas and feelings out of your consciousness. So we are going to work this feeling. We don't want to do it by force, although you can use force in the beginning. Sometimes force is necessary in the beginning to kind of get you going with this, but we want to keep working the feeling in a way that we become it, we embody it. Your assumption of the feeling of the wish fulfilled already realized should be so powerful within you that it becomes a foundation more solid to you than earth itself. You walk upon that feeling. You just know. We talk about faith, we talk about uh, belief, trust, but the deeper level of these things is knowing that you can have what you want, and knowing that your wish is fulfilled because you can feel its reality within you. These are very powerful places to come from, and you will find this practice if you end up in this place where you are consumed by the assumption of the feeling of your wish fulfilled already right now. Then you can get up from your meditation, get up from your visualization, wake up in the morning, whatever it is, just knowing that it's done. And you can continue to return to this feeling anytime you like. So something happens in your outer world that you don't like, or doesn't agree with you, or doesn't seem to match up with that. Let's turn it. Let's throw your reality in the direction that you want it to go. Go back within, focus on the feeling, let the feeling come into you. And essentially what we're doing is telling the outer world, you are not in control of my state. I control my state, and I will stay with this state. I will stay in this place of knowing that this thing I want is done, and I am already this ideal. I am money. I am love. I am happiness, whatever the state of being means to you. I hope you enjoyed this video and this study guide on The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard, one of my favorite books. Thanks again for watching. I am Jason from thelawofassumption.org, and we will see you in the next video.